Hey guys, welcome back to more brand new Malicious Compliance Reddit stories. In today's Ripestories video, my toxic new boss fired me to stroke his own ego, completely forgetting one tiny detail. I was the only employee who actually knew how to build their $1 million product. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is from r/MaliciousCompliance and is titled "Friday is my last day." Okay, if you insist. So for a little bit of background first, I work in the film/TV industry, and at the time of this story, it was a while ago, I was working an entry-level position called production assistant, or PA for short, on a failing TV show. My duties included office upkeep, stocking the kitchen, research for coworkers, various paperwork, picking up supplies from vendors, and picking up lunch for everyone in the department, among a long list of other tasks. Now, I really liked my immediate boss, coordinator number 1. The two of us had a system to keep the office running and were starting to become friends. The problem though, our department head was a sexist and racist ass, and at the height of the Me Too movement I might add, after one too many demeaning darlings, wink wink, sneaking his girlfriend into the office and flipping through Tinder on company time, coordinator number 1 reported him to the higher-ups, but in typical Hollywood fashion, they gave him a gentle slap on the wrist and then sent him back to the department. So then coordinator number 1 left the show in disgust and entered coordinator number 2. I already knew that number 2 and I would not get along immediately. She had been fired from her previous TV show for so-called attitude problems, and on her first day she chewed me out for, I crap you not, hanging the actor photos 11 inches too low on the wall. But it only got worse from there. This woman sucked up to the creepy department head, found faults with everyone around her, and just loved power trips. She quickly made herself a nuisance to everyone in the department, but creepy department head was too busy with Tinder to do anything between her constant berating, treating me like I was stupid, and unprofessional rudeness. She basically made my life a living hell. The final straw came when she screamed at me in front of the entire department for a small mistake. I almost packed my bag and walked out right there. In hindsight, I should have done it. But she told me that I would be replaced at the end of the month, so I thought I would hang in there and collect the paycheck while I could. And from then on, I counted down the days and made no attempt to hide my misery. The thing is, the TV show had barely started filming, and we were already severely behind schedule. The poor construction department was building sets 24/7, and the first episode was supposed to air in the next few weeks. For everyone in our department, this meant extremely long hours and working 6 days a week. Not my problem, I mean, I was leaving soon anyway. Number 2 reminded me on the last week saying, "Friday's your last day." It ended up being a hell of a week, more long hours and running behind schedule, and the department would need to work another Saturday. Well, Friday came, and I gleefully counted down the hours. At the end of the day, number 2 realized her mistake. She hustled over to me on my way out the door. "Can you work Saturday?" Cue malicious compliance. "Nope, you said Friday is my last day." That's when she got huffy. "I'm trying to get you some extra money." Giving up one day of my measly PA paycheck was well worth the look on her face when I said, "No thanks, Friday is my last day, bye," and walked out to happily never see her again. I took a job on a much better TV show a few weeks later with the nicest crew. To this day, I've worked on lots of other shows, and I always warn my coworkers not to ever work with her. Turns out she has quite the bad reputation around town, even without my help though. The fallout after I left, well, now that there was no PA working Saturday, number 2 had no choice but to do both her job and mine. And yeah, years later, I am now a coordinator, and I can tell you, it is a job that keeps you busy. There's no way I'd be able to get anything done without the help of my amazing PAs. So it gives me extreme satisfaction to know that she had to get off her high horse, hold her very important emails, and go get everyone lunch and snackies until my replacement was found. And the next one is also from r/MaliciousCompliance and is titled "Fire Me, Lose Millions." So this happened around 10 years ago, and I've always been very technical-minded and was able to read blueprints, construct complex devices, weld like MIG, TIG, stick, certified infect among other things, and I took a high-paying job with a company that made several things for railroads. The job entailed most of my skills I mentioned above, and it was a very small department. In fact, there were only 2 to 3 of us, but we got along great and challenged each other, which led to higher production. Sadly, the other guy in my department left for a better job, which then left me all by myself. My supervisor was great as well, liked to joke around with me, left me alone to focus on my work, and had my back when I needed him. We actually assembled signal enclosures and mast and ladder houses for railroads. Fast forward 3 years later and the owners buy a much bigger location and move the whole company. As you might expect, several departments get shuffled. And yep, my department gets folded into a completely different department that has no clue what I do. At first it was fine, but it starts to go pear-shaped pretty quickly. My new supervisor seemed good at first, but I quickly realized that he is a snake in the grass. For example, I had to help the prototype department assemble a new and lighter type of mast and ladder house, so I'm printing out issues and suggesting fixes and so on, and new supervisor is not happy. He keeps coming over huffing, groaning under his breath, standing over my shoulder, etc., and he finally interrupts and asks in an angry voice, "How much longer will this take?" I respond, "I got 4 more hours today and 8 hours every day after that." He looks puzzled, so I explain to him, "This is my department. This is where I work. These are my responsibilities. So if it takes 2 months, that's how long it takes." Almost as if to get the last word in, he says, "You work where and when I tell you," and then storms off, and next day I'm called into the office and they force me to sign a letter that states I now work in my new supervisor's department. Fine by me. I watch from a distance in my new department as all the stock hardware parts orders etc. of my old department begin to rack up, and since I'm the only one that works in that department, or rather used to work in that department, nobody is doing a thing about it. After about 2 weeks, my old department is a disaster, with items being thrown around wherever it would fit. Others had begun to miss deadlines and higher-ups wanted answers, and sure enough, I get called into the office where the new supervisor blames me for everything, but would not let me get a word in. And of course, they let me go without any reason or paperwork. The look of relief on my new ex-supervisor's face when I walked out was priceless. He had no clue what was coming. I leave with a smile plastered to my face because I knew something that they didn't. So here's the thing. I was the only one that knew how to build the mast and ladder structures, so then I relaxed at home for around 2 weeks because I knew I would be getting a call from them. I ignore the first dozen calls and then I answer, "Can you come back and build, train new hires, etc. for your department?" "Sure," I say, "for $20,000. No, that may seem like a lot, but it actually wasn't, because they made millions from these. So there really was only one option: pay me $20,000 or lose millions. Long story short, they went back and forth with me but finally conceded. I received $20,000 for 2 days of work and they were helpless. The cherry on top though was that my new ex-supervisor was fired for being a nitwit and costing the company $20,000. Edit, thanks for all the answers, didn't expect that, sorry it was so long. Some further info though, I did not want to work for them again. It potentially would have been a situation they used my knowledge and training of the new staff only to then terminate me for some made-up reason, which I understand. I mean, nobody wants a disgruntled employee, but why $20,000? I bounced around on numerous figures, but when it came time to say a number over the phone, 20,000 was the number that came out. No real thought behind it. Could I have gotten more? Yeah, I think so, but it paid my bills, spent some little vacation, and gave me time to be a bit picky about my next job. Did I get another job? Yeah. As to your questions, could I train 2 new workers in 2 days? Yes. Did I do it well? No. The company wanted it as cheap as possible, so they grabbed 2 new guys from a different department with 0 previous experience. The best I could do though was show them the general process given their limited experience and my limited time. As far as getting all the work up to date, in my department the expected production was 2 per day. My personal record in 1 day was 18 before I stopped. Previous good supervisor told me to stop. What the heck are you gonna do after you finish a month's worth of work in a day? You'll be sitting around with nothing to do, or you'll be going home early. So the first month I was there, I set up a series of jigs that allowed fast, repeatable results. That, coupled with years of doing it, meant I could build them in my sleep. And yeah guys, to OP, you got shoved into a department against your will and gave your new boss a completely reasonable answer about a job that he had zero training in and then got fired out of pure ego for it. The company here created this disaster the second they folded a specialized role into a team that didn't understand it. You did not sabotage anything here, you just declined to work for free, fixing a mess that you did not cause. Either way guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this story and whether or not OP might have been an a-hole here. And a user in the Reddit comment said that manager wanted to swing his weight around without understanding the actual mechanics of the shop floor. You did not extort anyone, you offered a freelance consulting rate for highly specialized emergency contract work. If they were losing millions of dollars on missed deadlines, then $20,000 was an absolute bargain to get the line moving again. Good point, by the way. Another Reddit comment said, obviously your manager was a massive tool on a power trip and absolutely deserved to get fired. He created the mess. But honestly, charging $20,000 to come back and half-ass train two random guys who have no idea what they are doing? You basically admitted that you didn't train them well because the company cheaped out. You basically took 20 grand from the owners and left those two poor-collar workers set up to fail on a highly technical assembly line. And yeah guys, I'm not sure if that's the right approach here to blame OP for what happened. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments. And the next one is a beautiful, brand new malicious compliance story which is titled, "My latest new client set the strictest rules I've ever heard." So I obeyed every one of them. Yesterday I had a new client who was referred to me book a 90-minute mobile massage. She was very specific over text before I even showed up. She told me exactly what she wanted. Deep tissue only, focus on her upper back, shoulders and neck. Don't check in with me at all. I hate when therapists keep asking if the pressure is okay, just do the work. She also said, I don't want any small talk either, just quiet. When the time is up, that's it, no free extras. I confirmed everything back to her so there was zero confusion and she replied, "Perfect, see you then." I get there, set up and go over the same list one more time in person just to be safe and she nods and says, "Yep, that's exactly what I want, don't ask me anything once we start." So I did exactly that. I put my headphones in to get some much needed audiobook time, one ear only so I could still hear if she actually needed something. By the way, I would recommend checking out Ripestories podcast on Spotify instead. Anyway, started the timer on my phone where she could see it and worked in complete silence. No check-ins, no "how's the pressure?", no small talk, just the exact work she requested from me, and every time I felt her body tense or shift I kept going at the same pressure she had asked for. No adjustments, no questions, and when the 90 minutes hit I stopped, and immediately. I did not even offer the free scalp massage or hot towels I normally throw in, I just said, "That's time." She sat up looking annoyed and said, "Wait, that was it? The pressure felt hard towards the end, you never even checked in on me. Most therapists give a little extra time." I looked at her and calmly replied, "You specifically told me not to check in, not to ask about extra pressure, and that when the time was up that it was it with no free extras. I followed your instructions exactly." She got quiet for a second and then said, "Well, I didn't mean it like that. You should have known to check anyway. I'm not tipping for that." I smiled and said, "That's fine, the session is paid for already. You can get dressed and I'll be outside." She started packing up her things while muttering about how I was too rigid and not customer service oriented. Meanwhile, I just kept packing my stuff in silence the same way she had requested the entire session. By the way, I've never felt more at peace ending a session. Was I supposed to ignore the very clear rules she set and somehow read her mind instead? And yeah guys, that is what I would call listening to a customer. For OP, the customer is clearly king. Or Queen Karen in this case. And the next one is another beautiful malicious compliance story which is titled, "Karen told me to hang up, so I did." I work for a large electronics company doing sales over the phone, so we get a lot of calls daily and take credit card details to place orders and as well as place finance orders. Since fraud is such a big deal, our company were taught that only the account holder for the CC or finance account can place an order. Cue Karen calling to place an order for finance, go through everything, get her name, address number, and payment details. Just before I place the order, she goes, "Oh, the card is in my dad's name, that's fine, right?" I tell her no, her dad needs to place the order as he's the account holder, cue her arguing for about 5 minutes how she's his daughter and that I need to finalize this order now. I tell her I'm sorry but I cannot do that. As I've mentioned, the account holder needs to place the order. She starts cussing me out, calls me a stupid damn idiot and that I know nothing, and demands that I place the order. Well, I've had enough at this point since she started swearing and getting aggressive, so I said, I'm sorry, but if you continue to speak to me in such a manner, I will terminate this call. Customer says, well, terminate it then. So I did with the, okay, then thank you for calling and have a nice day. I heard her go, no, wait, as I hung up on her. God, that felt good. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, brand new by the way, and it is titled, I was told to let inspectors into my apartment and cooperate with them. The company that owns my building emailed us that inspectors were coming by to look at our apartments because there was possible structural damage from a recent storm, and they told us we had to let them in. It was mandatory and that we should cooperate with them. I tried to email back to ask when roughly today they'd be by and who would be entering the apartment because it would be possible I wouldn't be home, but it was from an account that doesn't even accept replies. The inspectors came by earlier, but it turns out that they were not inspecting the apartments for storm damage specifically, but looking at the general condition of the apartments because they represent a company looking to buy the entire building. So then I cooperated fully with them and answered all their questions, which included telling them how the fire alarm system goes off randomly, and did 4 times in the first 2 weeks I was here, how there are electrical issues that cause one of my lights and my microwave to randomly stop functioning, how the walls are so thin I can hear the subway and the people at the bar a few buildings down / my neighbor. They also asked me about my general experience here, and I told them that I'm leaving the day my lease is up and that I could never imagine someone living in this building longer than their 1-year lease. If that long at all. I included that when I raised the possibility of moving out in my first month, the current owners offered me to give all my money back, including application fees, so that they were most likely used people moving in and abruptly moving out. It was pretty satisfying to watch the lead guy's wheels turning as he most likely lowered the bid for the building in his mind. I don't think it was all me, because talking to the tenants here must have involved a lot of negative comments anyway, but I'm glad for the role I played in it because the current owners are terrible. And the next one is another beautiful malicious compliance story. This one is titled, Want me to reply to an email even though I am off? Okay, sure. So this one is from a while back on one of my old jobs as a systems analyst. This was during the height of the pandemic, so we were all work from home at the time. I worked as a non-exempt employee, meaning I did my 40 hours Monday to Friday and overtime for any work over that. Our VP at the time, when we were getting ready to lug all our stuff home once lockdown was announced, made sure to remind us that unless we were exempt, we were not to answer any work-related emails, texts or calls outside our work hours, and said that if anyone tried to give us grief over that, to let him know about it. He was a good bean, that VP. Well, for some background, I was the main analyst for our systems, and I was also the main guy to reach out to for reports and things like that. Most of the folks knew how to run basic reports and export them to Excel, but the more complicated ones I was one of probably only 2 in the company who knew how to really make them. But anyway, a few weeks into lockdown, a supervisor who worked at a different city emailed me asking for a report on a Saturday morning. After not getting an answer from me being off work that I was, they decided to call my phone instead. I ignored it the first time, but they seemed pretty determined to reach out to me and called me a second and third time before sending me a text demanding I stop being unprofessional, get on my work PC and answer their email. I decided, F it, they want a reply, I'll get them that reply, so I boot up my PC, opened the email, and without running the report or anything, I just hit reply and CC my VP. I wrote something along the lines of, Hi supervisor, per VP, I'm not supposed to be working or even answering emails on weekends. Waiting for approval from VP to run this report. I sent it off and left my work PC running because I already knew there was gonna be a crap storm incoming. Less than 10 minutes later, I get a separate email from my VP telling me to hold off on the report and asking if he could call me, with him clarifying that him calling me would constitute overtime and that I would be paid for it. Well, I was not doing anything that day anyway, so I tell him to go ahead, and he called me up asking what report this was about and if I'd already started working on it. I told him not yet, but that supervisor seemed pretty pressed about receiving it as soon as possible, so he asked if supervisor reached out to me on my phone. And I confirmed it. He asked me to send him the text and to not worry about running the report, and then told me to turn off my PC and enjoy the rest of my weekend. Monday morning I opened my PC to a sternly written email from VP sent to all supervisors with me in CC tersely reminding everyone that I was non-exempt and that under no circumstances was anyone to reach out to me outside of my working hours, and if they needed anything to reach out to him first and he would determine if it was important enough to have me do outside of normal business hours. Well, come next payday, I did see an additional 3 hours of overtime on my paycheck, which was nice, because the entire thing only happened over an hour or so. After that, no one ever tried calling me outside of working hours, only my VP did, and only ever on extenuating circumstances, and every time he always made sure that I was paid at least 2 hours of overtime each time, even if it was just a report that took me like 30 minutes to run. As for the supervisor, if you're curious, they didn't get fired, but from what I heard from the grapevine was that they got a pretty nasty dressing down from the VP over their behavior, and sure enough, on one of our weekly Zoom calls that week, they looked really subdued and avoided speaking to me directly, basically the entire time. And Ripestories, the next couple of stories are gonna be a compilation of some of the best Reddit malicious compliance stories we have read over the years, so please enjoy. Fire me for driving too fast at 15 km per hour and then tell me to drive back to the district office? You got it, boss. And by the way, that's around 9 miles per hour for our American viewers. So this is gonna be kind of a long one, but I have a malicious compliance and a pro-revenge in one story. A friend reminded me of this when talking about all the forest fires burning in Canada right now. In the late 80s, I got a job with the Ministry of Natural Resources driving to support fighting forest fires. It was a great job, just over double minimum wage, a major bonus at 19, and they had no limit to the number of hours you could work. Fire season started early, and by mid-May I was supporting one that was, I think a long time ago, 300 to 400 hectares and growing quickly. 1 hectare is around 2.5 acres by the way. Back then, I think the whole district was around 100 square kilometers, think all of Indiana, so there was a lot of driving. One day I get to the on-site HQ and get told to wait while they found me a return load. A little later, I'm told to go to the helicopter staging area to pick up the fire boss FB. To preface, the road was crap. I pick him and a few others up and make my way back. Halfway there, I hit a deep pothole and the FB just loses it. Starts bellowing about damn kids speeding, no respect, etc. and for the 5 minutes it takes to get back. I found out on the way there that going too fast was not a good deal, so I made sure to not go faster than 15 km per hour, aka 9 miles per hour. As soon as we get to base camp, slams his way out of the truck and screams, "You're fired! Get back to district and have them process you." Okay, F you very much, sir. We were deep in the bush. I don't know how deep, but it took me close to 7 hours to get there. So, cue the malicious compliance. I grabbed 2 20-liter gas cans, 5 gallons, and set off. Real slow. If 15 km per hour was too fast for these roads, then the proper speed was obviously however fast the truck went at idle. Unless there was a hill, I wasn't a monster. It took 22 hours to reach the first paved road, and then I set the cruise control 5 km per hour below the speed limit and went to get fired. An extra $300-ish hear me. I process out and I meet one of the guys, call him crew boss CB, who taught the level 1 forest firefighter course I took before I got hired to drive. We got along well, but there are only 2 new full-time hires that year and none on his crew. He had just come with one of his guys who broke his leg and was going to personnel to find someone new. I was quickly hired on as his 4th. 2 hours later, I'm being driven to meet his crew at a fire. The couple says later that the fire is declared out and we are off to a new fire. Yep, the fire I was fired from. Kind of revenge-ish, but it gets better. So cue the pro-revenge. CB, it turns out, is besties with FB, so FB has our crew as the initial response crew. This meant that we spent a lot of time riding in the helicopter with FB and responding to jump fires that would take minimal time to deal with. It took a week before he recognized me and I watched out the corner of my eye, something I thought was only in books or is said as an exaggeration. This guy went from pink to red to actually turning purple. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I see the skittle flowing out as he yelled into the headset, and I got some major side eye from CB for the rest of the flight. When CB asked about it later and I explained, including the drive back, he almost passed out. It turns out, surprise, FB has a long history of exploding over nothing and taking it out on the nearest poor idiot. He ended up firing 2 more guys over the same thing and likely the same pothole. So yeah, CB knew what he was like, but they got along really well. It turns out he also really liked poking the bear. For the rest of that fire, CB made sure I was seated, so I was the first person he saw if he looked over his shoulder. On a later fire, our crew got admin duties and CB was FB's number 2. I got to be, as CB put, his helper monkey and FB's jock itch. The rest of the crew knew, so there wasn't any friction, and they got a kick out of it. It was a great summer, and I worked for CB 3 more summers through university. Always went back with great stories, really nice money. I collected unemployment during school, not sure if it was legal, but no one said anything, and pretty sure time has run out anyway, in amazing shape but with a really weird tan. And yeah guys, if you enjoy these malicious compliance stories, please don't forget to like the video and let me know in the comments. It would be awesome if we could reach 1000 likes, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is the title story, which is titled, "You Want Me to Quit? Okay. Company immediately collapses." So for the last 10 years, I've been working from home as an automation engineer for a relatively small company that produced custom-built industrial gas treatment units. Industrial chillers, compressor stations, that sort of thing. My job was to write algorithms for PLCs, design HMI, and setting up data transfer for customers' SCADA systems. Basically, I was the person who told machines what to do. I was getting significant below market pay for such a position, but with only 4 to 5 projects per year and each taking me 2 to 3 weeks to complete, I was not arguing, since I was getting paid for mostly doing nothing, and I was fortunate enough to have considerable passive income thanks to lucky investments of my inheritance. So everything was great until a couple of years ago, when the owner decided to retire and sell the company. So here comes the new management with new policies. So in my country, every worker is entitled to at least 4 weeks of paid vacation time per year, and all unspent vacation is rolled over to the next year, but you have to take at least 2 uninterrupted weeks per year. So if you only take your mandatory vacation, you accumulate 14 additional days per year. And by the way guys, I'm curious, how much paid vacation time are you entitled to where you live? Let me know in the comments, I'm really curious. Given how much free time I actually had, I rarely used more than mandatory 2 weeks per year, always making sure there be no commissioning or maintenance planned during my vacation. During these events, I would remotely access maintenance engineer's laptop to make necessary adjustments to the algorithms, so everything works perfectly in real working conditions. But one of the first policies new management implemented was schedule-based vacations. So now I had to decide when I take my 2 weeks at the start of the year. I chose the first weeks of April. In early March, I get a call from manager of the development team who asks me to come on a quick 3-day work trip to help maintenance engineers switch PLC and upload new project. Well, apparently thanks to new maintenance team manager, a lot of maintenance engineers quit and they are short-staffed, and the only one they can send at the moment is bad with a computer. There isn't much for me to do since we had identical stations going through the same PLC switch month prior, so I will just fly there, chill until the electrical panel is rewired, new PLC is installed, and when I just upload new project to PLC and fly home. I thought for myself and agreed to go. Apparently maintenance engineer not only bad with computers but also knows nothing about electrical work, so I had to do everything myself, which I'm not actually qualified to do, but at this point I don't want to disappoint the client, who turned out to be a bunch of really nice people, so after a week and with only 3 burnt down fuses, I finished. After returning home, I informed my manager what I'm not going to any more business trips since I don't get paid enough to also do maintenance engineer's work. First day of my vacation comes and I get another call. Despite my poor judgment, I decided to answer. "Hey, we need you to go on another business trip starting next Monday. It will just take a week for this project." I said, "I'm not familiar with that project. It was done while I was on paternity leave. In my country, either parent can take paternity/maternity leave up to 3 years, and after the first 6 months, my wife asked me to switch. Yeah, we had to contract a specialist to do that project while you're on leave. I will send it to you along with documentation right away." And then it disconnects. I checked the received project and it is huge. 7 PLCs, 6 HMI panels, everything has to work as a single system, and the project is a total mess. Nothing would work, you just have to do everything from scratch. It will probably take me close to a month to finish. And that is with doing everything from the comfort of my own home, where I am more productive. So I call back and I said, yeah, I looked at this project and that's a mess. It's not in the working condition and no way to finish it in a week. I'll do what I can do, but as I said last time, I am doing it remotely as always. I won't go on another business trip, especially now. I have too many things events planned for the next few weeks, I cannot go. But reception on site is terrible, you won't be able to access it remotely. And we already missed all deadlines on this project, the client is pissed and we are looking at huge fines. The CEO is breathing down my neck, we need it fixed yesterday. Then I will email the maintenance engineer project with changes each evening once he's in the hotel with decent reception, and he can email me a list of things what needs fixing. It's not the first time we've done it that way. Okay, I hear you. I will have to speak with the CEO about it. About 50 minutes later, I get another call. The CEO says, "If you don't want to go, you should just write a resignation letter." I'm the only employee who knows how to do my job, but yeah, sure, I will send my resignation letter right away. I was thinking about not doing it, so they had to terminate me and pay me termination compensation, but when I decided to be petty in a different way, in my country you had to give at least 2 weeks notice, unless both parties agreed to shorter notice. So I write my letter and set my resignation day as 14th of April, which is 2 weeks. Shortly after, it gets approved. The deed is done. And then I get another call a bit later. "So, will you be able to finish this project before you leave?" "I won't be able to do any work on that project before I leave." "What? Why? You still have 2 weeks and we really need it done." "Well, you see, I'm on vacation right now. The last day of my vacation will be April 13th and I'm resigning on the 14th. So the fallout was the following. I recently got a message from an ex-colleague I have friendly relationships with, and apparently the company is in deep crap right now. Deadlines were missed, fines rolled in, and the company's accounts have been frozen. They even were unable to pay salaries for the last 2 months. They are now toast and they will have to file bankruptcy. Don't worry, people will get paid in the end. In my country, salary debts have the highest priority when bankrupt businesses sell their assets. The downside? I still have not received my compensation for my 120 saved vacation days. And yeah guys, if you've ever worked in a terrible company like this and have gotten malicious compliance, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your story. The next one is a super emotional story about not being allowed to bring a service animal to a wedding. It is titled, "Am I the jerk for not allowing my friend to bring her service animal, aka guide dog, to my wedding?" So I, 28 female, will be getting married in September. I have a blind friend who mostly relies on her guide dog. The dog obviously has access rights to all places. Now I'm in a sticky situation though, and I can sense that I will be the a-hole here. I have 3 chronic illnesses that I take 23 pills a day for, severe asthma, and you guessed it, an extremely severe dog allergy. Usually when I meet with my friend we meet in the open and I take 2 allergy pills. However, because of all the other medication I take, these pills make me extremely drowsy to the point where I'm officially not allowed to drive and I usually crash as soon as I get home from our get-togethers. Our wedding will be very intimate, in other words, we'll be in relatively small rooms. I feel horrible about this, but I don't think I can let my friend bring her dog. It just wouldn't work. I talked about it with my fiancé and some friends. So finally, I talked to my friend about it, explained the situation, and said I would love her to come, but she cannot bring her dog. I said that 4 of our mutual friends had offered to be on a roster and assist her should she need it. Alternatively, if she's not comfortable with this, she could bring a person of her choosing to the wedding, or I would pay for a professional aid for the day. I think it's important to note that her dog is not for any additional issues like seizures or anything like that. Unfortunately, she was less than happy with my suggestions. She accused me of being ableist and thinking her disability can be switched off for the day. I understand what I asked was a lot and it's a difficult topic. I told her to tell me if she changes her mind and I would be happy to make arrangements. And yeah, Ripestars, let me know in the comments, do you think that OP was the a-hole here for not budging on this topic? And was OP maybe even being ableist? I'm curious what you have to say about this. Comment number 1 said, not the a-hole. I was so ready to label you an a-hole after reading the title, but I think you have extenuating circumstances for not wanting a service dog or any dog at your wedding. I can also understand why your friend would be upset. This probably is not the first time someone has tried to stop her from bringing her service dog somewhere. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. I think this is just a misunderstanding. Your chronic illnesses and allergy are a disability too. I can understand why your friend would be opposed to going out without the guide she's used to, and I also get that you wouldn't want to be asleep or severely drowsy on your wedding day. I would talk to your friend more and see if any of the solutions you mentioned could work, or see if either of you could come up with more options. I feel bad for you and your friend. This is a difficult situation. Comment number 3, hey, disabled person here, there's actually a name for the situation you're describing. It's called conflicting access needs. And for example, I have photosensitivity, so I do a lot better in dark rooms. But when it's dark, it's also hard to lip read. So yeah, there's a lot of writing by disabled people on navigating conflicting access needs. Maybe some of this would help you. Good luck. It's probably hitting some buttons for your friend because there's a lot of ableism service dog handlers have to deal with. So it might be kind of a knee-jerk reaction, sort of like how I feel when people suggest I try yoga or something. Update, some of you may remember my post. Well, since then, I've gotten married. We decided to get married sooner than we planned because the situation was good where we live and we didn't want to risk having to cancel if the numbers spike before I took your advice and called my friend though. I explained how severe my allergies are once again and told her how I really want to be able to enjoy my wedding day. I apologized for making suggestions and not simply asking her, and said she is welcome to bring up any ideas that would help her being able to attend. She told me she still wanted to, that do not include her dog. She was adamant that it was her dog or nothing. While disappointed, I was prepared for that and told her that would not be possible and that she will be missed at the wedding. We sent out the new invitations with the new date and simply didn't invite her, so technically she was not uninvited. Some of our mutual friends that are in the wedding told me that she had asked them not to attend in solidarity, but luckily they all thought that was ridiculous. Oh wow guys, and by the way, I've never heard of something like that before. Why would you ask people to not attend a wedding just out of solidarity? That makes absolutely no sense in this case. Anyway, we had a beautiful wedding and spent our honeymoon in the Flinders Ranges, which I can only recommend. As for my friend, I'm open to reconciliation, but she will have to make the first step. So that's it. While it did not go as I hoped it would, I'm still in a happy place now, enjoying my life as a married woman. Commenter number 1, yes, you are an a-hole. Your friend was wrong to try to sabotage your wedding, but you asked a person with a disability and a service dog to not bring the dog. You actually are in violations of the Americans with Disability Act. A service dog has the legal right to go anywhere the handler goes, and I once called the police on a restaurant that was refusing to allow a service dog, citing health laws. Trying to explain the requirements for service dogs, they still refused. The police intervened and the individual and I had a lovely dinner. Apologies are needed from both sides. Then OB responded, this was not in the US and it was not a public place. And by the way guys, that was a beautiful way to shut down you are the a-hole comment. Props to OP. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. After finishing the academic season with decent exam results, a long summer and a good college was just around the corner. This was only topped by the big party I was planning for my birthday next week. The days leading up to the party flew by and it was here before I knew it. My parents, being the socialites that they are, could not stop themselves from going overboard, inviting every family member, friend and neighbor to an already crowded household. My dad then brought his tuned 1964 Shelby Daytona supercar out from the garage. Which was weird because he was usually quite protective of it. To my surprise, he had decided to pass it down to me as a birthday and graduation present, giving me a great incentive to start my driving lessons as well. And yeah, Ripestars, by the way, that seems like a great first car for a new driver. Anyway, I was over the moon and my friends were jealous as hell. Many people swarmed around to get a good look at the car, but their interest dropped when the pizza delivery arrived. Returning to the yard after eating, I noticed the door was open and I thought I saw someone sitting inside and I assumed it was my dad until I spotted him in the kitchen. Going back outside, I found it was our neighbor Karen, who was oblivious to my approach until I gave a not so subtle cuff. Karen had not been invited to the party, which she knew as well, but still presumed to make herself at home even in my new car. Karen jumped and then turned to glare at me like I had purposefully snuck up to scare her. I thought to quickly change the subject by mentioning how nice the car was, which she agreed as she rubbed her sweaty palms across the dashboard. As more people began to exit the house, she took her cue to leave. I locked the car soon after. While I was helping to tidy up the party mess, my parents told me that they wanted to take a week to go see my aunt a few states over, asking me to stay and watch the house. I obliged, having no reason to give up a week of my summer when it could be spent with the house to myself. I was tinkering with the car on the next morning as they packed their bags, eager to get familiar with my new vehicle. Some time passed by before a voice interrupted me. I closed the hood expecting my mom, but instead I found Karen facing me. To my surprise, I must have been too focused to notice my parents leaving earlier. Before I could speak up, Karen turned her attention to the car, running her hand along it as she talked. It turns out that she was the person who sold the car to my dad, though it was quite obvious she still felt quite attached to it. When I proudly exclaimed that my dad had given it to me as a birthday present, she snapped back at me, swearing that she was still the rightful owner because it was not done properly, or whatever that meant. The conversation hung on awkwardly after that until she excused herself and I went back into the house. I was starting to wonder whether a week alone was such a good idea after all. And well, my mom called me later to tell me that they got to the place safely, and I told them about Karen's visit and they were not pleased. My dad explained that she was forced to sell some items to pay off a court order, though he warned me not to mention it as she could get very annoyed about it. I played off my worries so they did not need to end their trip early and steeled myself to a few more days. I pulled myself out of bed after not much sleep as some hoodlum had been driving fast around the block late into last night. I pulled apart the curtains as I yawned, interrupted by the sight of my empty driveway. As I panicked outside, I suddenly caught it from the corner of my eye. My Shelby Daytona on Karen's driveway. Getting closer, I saw tread marks from the road leading up to the car, and inside the keys still in the ignition. The realization hit me hard. Karen was the hoodlum cruising around last night in my damn car. I saw the door open as I jumped into the seat and took the car home, followed closely by the thief. Karen started in outrage, but when she noticed my own emotions boiling over, she changed to a softer tone of petty excuses. She said that I had left the keys inside, so she moved it to keep it safe. I scoffed loudly and asked if she took it for a spin, knowing her interest in the car since my birthday. She denied it immediately, though averted her gaze after. I went inside, ignoring her pleas. I did not trust her one bit, and my suspicions were quickly confirmed by my doorcam footage. I hated the idea that she stole it, but at least I now had proof. 2 blissfully quiet days passed by before I saw her again, only by chance as I was grabbing a snack from the fridge. As if the woman had not learned her lesson from last time, she was opening the car door, head swiveling suspiciously like a comically obvious criminal. I ran outside to stop her, catching her just before she fell onto the seat. Karen darted to her feet and scurried back to the curb before turning to confront me. This time her mood was dark. While I was the only one who had a right to be angry about the situation, it was not hard for her to twist it until she was the victim, claiming that I'd been intimidating and harassing a harmless, nice old lady like her. I asked her again about her joyride, which she denied again without apology, though she did seem to sour a bit after I told her about the video footage I had. She demanded that I hand over the tapes because I was illegally recording her, though it only pointed to my own driveway. When I refused, she threatened to call the cops, and I let her as I did not feel like I had anything to worry about. After Karen called the cops, she refused to let me leave her side in case I made a run for it, apparently. I was seriously starting to doubt her sanity or mental capacity by this point, and I could see why I was warned from getting into it with her. Half an hour of a menacing staring contest later, help arrived in the form of 2 uniformed officers who pulled up nearby. Without so much as a hello, Karen launched herself at the 2 men, listing everything that had happened today while I sat patiently. Karen claimed that I had stolen her car and then threatened her when she tried to take it back, which I protested, but all it achieved was a shouting match no one could understand. In a moment to catch my breath, Karen scoffed at me because of my age, saying that I was too young to own a car, which they initially seemed to believe. Leading one of the officers to my house, I showed them my ID, birth certificate and driver's license. Without the noisy one present, I was able to calmly explain and apologize to the issue. I was also able to show them the camera footage of the theft in action, which they seemed to be quite resolved about. Back outside, the officers compared notes as Karen glared at me smugly. The cops decided to dismiss the issue as I could prove ownership, which she was furious about. Before they turned to leave, I told them I want to press charges over the issue and happy for us both to go to the precinct to answer their questions. Karen's fury turned to me after that, calling me a slimy little crap and shouting in my face. When one of the officers tried to intervene, she lashed out wildly and smashed a wing mirror of the car before attempting to just storm off. The cops grabbed her before she reached her driveway. She was hauled into the back of the police car, kicking and screaming like a mountain lion, though she could do little else to resist them, and into the car she went. Eventually, Karen has pled innocence until the footage was brought up, at which point she admitted everything. All in all, Karen ended up going to jail for this, which I feel is very much deserved. I also got a restraining order against her, so she can never mess with my car again. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So I have been living in my neighborhood for well over 2 decades, so essentially my entire life. I'm living in the same house that I grew up in, and because of my long history here, I'm pretty well acquainted with all the neighbors. Of course, I would not really say that we are friends, but we greet each other when we pass on the street or by each other's houses, occasionally drop off gifts or offerings for the holidays, and help each other when we need it. Everyone is generally friendly with each other, and I don't hear much drama other than the occasional family drama, as we all mainly just keep to ourselves. My next door neighbor was a sweet family of 5. They had a bunch of chihuahuas and their kids would always be outside playing with the dogs. I remember one time they chased me. Chihuahuas are tiny, but so was I, and I was scared for my life. The couple was relatively young when I was a kid, and as I got older, I would get closer with them. I would talk mostly about fishing to the father, as I knew he was a big fishing guy. The family was generally nice and pleasant to be around. They moved out of the neighborhood about 4 years ago. The house was up for sale for a long time until finally another family bought it 2 years ago. It was a small family this time, only 2 kids and no dogs. I'm a person who likes to keep to themselves, so I'm not the type to introduce myself to neighbors. I just kept to myself, occasionally greeting the neighbors when I saw them to welcome them into the neighborhood, but nothing more than that. And apparently, it was a good thing that I kept my distance, because around 2 months into the family being here, I began to hear my neighbors talking trash about the people who live there. I keep to myself, yes, but I am nosy, so I asked my neighbors for some of the details. The complaints were centered around the wife, who we will call Karen. The neighbors across from me are Mexican, and they had a quinceanera for their daughter. It is a party, so of course it's gonna be a little loud. Personally, I was not really bothered by it, and neither were any of the other neighbors, so I heard. But Karen had called the police on them, complaining about the noise. Luckily, the police were nice and just told them to watch their noise levels. I thought that it might have been a one-off incident. After all, the party could have been loud after all, and maybe I just tuned out the noise because I'm used to living here. But after that, I started hearing more about Karen causing chaos around the neighborhood. As the typical stereotype of her namesake, she would complain incessantly about the most minor things, and very soon she became the talk of the neighborhood. I tried not to involve myself in the drama, reserving my opinions on Karen to myself, but I heard a lot of stories and decided that it would be better to avoid Karen to spare myself the trouble. Of course, I would continue to wave and things like that just to keep up the peace, but as for full-length conversations, I would try to avoid it as much as possible, but as my luck would have it, the trouble found me instead. Karen and I share a fence. We have not had problems before, but one day while I was out relaxing on my porch, Karen leaned over and began talking to me. She demanded that I move my fence so that she could expand her flower garden. She did not even try starting with small talk, she just jumped straight to the point, which in my opinion is a bit tacky and rude. Like, come on, at least pretend like you care first before asking for what you want. Anyways, I told her honestly that I believed that the request was extremely odd and that moving the fence would have her end up encroaching on my own property. She tried claiming that it was in fact me who was encroaching on her land and that she was simply trying to claim what was rightfully hers. I tried to counter by saying that the previous family had no problem with the placement of the fence and that our yards were split so that they were equal in length. She replied that she was not the previous family and that they were probably a bunch of pushovers. On behalf of the family, I felt genuinely offended and told her that the answer was no. I returned inside because I didn't want to deal with her yapping. I thought that would be as I had already told her no, and because it was such an odd request, but the next day when I came back from work, she approached me again, asking about it once more. Seriously? Does this woman feel no shame? And to answer for OP here, no, these people feel no shame, that's for sure. The answer was no, of course, so once again I told her no, and that is when, to my shock, she threatened to sue me, saying she would do everything to prove that the land was actually hers. I just ignored her, but I was genuinely flabbergasted by the length that she was going to for just a sliver of land. However, her words did get me a little worried. If it turned out that the property was legally hers, I would be in big trouble if her threats were not empty. I debated what to do for a bit, even talking it out with my parents and my friends to get as many opinions as possible, but ultimately I decided to conduct a property survey so I could get some peace of mind. I hired a land surveyor to check it out for me, making sure to choose a day where I knew Karen would be gone, as I didn't want her to know what I was up to. No doubt she would make an insanely big deal about it. The land surveyor did his job well, and the results were not what I was expecting. I expected the land to be evenly split right down where the fence was right now, but it wasn't. So, it turns out my land was a little bigger for whatever reason, so some of her property was actually technically mine. I did not know what to do with this information and I kept it to myself for a while. Well, I ultimately decided that I would show it to Karen, hoping that it would settle the dispute and hopefully get Karen to calm down. I requested a copy of the survey from the land surveyor. I decided that I would not show it to Karen until she came up to me asking about it. I think I secretly hoped for her to just forget about the entire thing, but of course she didn't. I did not have to wait for long though. A week after I received the results of the land survey, Karen came up to me asking if I had considered her offer. This is when I decided to show the results of the survey. I explained to her that I decided to conduct a property survey to set things straight, trying not to attack her, and I told her that the fence was already settled on my property, so therefore the land was not hers and I was not trespassing on any property by having the fence where it currently was. And therefore she had no grounds to sue me. Karen scoffed and said that my property survey was clearly a fake and that I was trying to trick her to get away from the lawsuit. It is an insane pet peeve of mine when people tell me that I'm lying when I'm actually not, and I kept trying to insist that it was not a fake, but to no avail. Well, still, I was wishful and I thought that this would finally deter her from bothering me, but no, I had to be wrong. She continued bothering me about this fence. Day in and day out, she approached me. I'm not even kidding, she accosted me every single day asking whether I would change my mind and reminding me that she would sue if I didn't bring in the fence. I finally had enough and I decided it would be time to take action. Since Karen refused to accept the property survey, I would move the fence where it actually belonged, claiming back all the land that was mine. I had a contractor move the fence while Karen and her family were away, which ultimately sliced Karen's garden right in half. I tried not to destroy her plants or anything. I'm not cruel enough to do that, but I knew that it would really bother her. Bother her it did. When Karen came back, she stormed to my door, shouting all sorts of obscenities about how she was gonna sue me for what I did. I told her that I was just moving the property line to where it should be, since she was so worried about the true borders beforehand. We went back and forth for a little bit before Karen finally returned to her house. A few days later I was served a lawsuit. I honestly expected it, but it amazed me, once again, just how far Karen would go for a little more space in her garden. I mean seriously, putting in the time, effort and money just for a little bit of land? I have to appreciate her dedication to the cause. Although I was annoyed that Karen was not letting this go, I decided to go along with it anyway because I already knew that I was in the right. I did not want to get a lawyer, as it would be a pretty easy case to win, and I did not want to spend my money like that, so I just went along with the one from Legal Aid. Karen sued me for property destruction and trespassing, claiming I was encroaching on her land. I presented the land survey showing that the area I moved the fence to was my own, and therefore Karen had no right to sue me. It was a relatively short case, literally just a day, and the court ruled in my favor. I did not want to put in the effort of moving the entire fence back, and I was getting used to the expanded yard space, so I kept the fence where it was. However, I made a small section for Karen's garden so she could have it back in full. It looked weird for a while, but I didn't care. Karen did not bother me after that. Finally, it was all over. I was a little worried now that I was a new enemy of Karen's, but honestly, so was the entire neighborhood, so at least I was not alone in my struggles. A month after the court case concluded, I saw a moving truck outside her house. I watched as they loaded the truck and left swiftly. I did not ask them anything about it, but I was curious, so I asked my neighbors instead because they are pretty big gossipers. And apparently it was because of me that she moved away. Well, it was not just because of me, because numerous people had been bothered by Karen's antics and she was receiving many negative complaints from our neighbors. When she sued me and lost the lawsuit, she felt so embarrassed and, I guess, done with the neighborhood that she moved out. Frankly, I don't mind, she was really a nuisance and now our neighborhood is in relative peace. I decided to keep the extended property line for now. Also, if anyone decides that they want more room in their yard, I will move the fence back to where it was before this whole mess started. By the way, Karen's place is still up for sale. I just hope that whoever moves in here next is nice. And yeah guys, let's hope you will never have a neighbor like Karen. That is worse than having a terrible enemy. Either way, the next one is an amazing malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. And by the way, please don't forget to like the video because that helps me tremendously in fighting back against the AI algorithm. So this happened decades ago, but after reading another MC, I figured I would post this. So I was a manager of a programming department. I initially had 5 programmers reporting to me and I was able to spend half my time programming and half of it managing. I always got exceeds or far exceeds expectations on my annual reviews. About 10 years later, my team had 25 people and I was spending less and less time programming. Fast forward a few years and I missed 2 months during the year for a surgery and hospital stay, and in my annual review my boss, who knew nothing about programming, told me that I was not doing a good job and the programming department was missing deliverable dates, probably because I was in the hospital. They wanted me to go back to just programming and I was stripped of my manager and only focus on programming. I was pissed off, but I told him that I can do that. So then I told my former staff what had happened and told them to direct all questions to my boss, who knew zero about programming. He was overwhelmed and soon senior management figured out that my boss was the problem and not me. They ended up canning him and replaced him with the VP of programming in the UK. I'm in the US. She was great since she started as a programmer and was an excellent boss in general. Since I was just a programmer now, all of the managers were in the UK and I told my former staff to direct all questions to their new bosses in the UK. Since there was a 6-hour time difference and we only overlapped 2 or 3 hours each day, that made getting questions answered in a timely fashion quite difficult. In the meantime, my health was not the best and my doctor told me I should go to a 4-day/32-hour work week so my health would not continue to suffer. Since my employer was a strict 40-hour workweek company, I looked for another job and got 8 job offers in about a month. I was ready to resign. Finally, after a few months, my new boss asked me to be a manager again because of the time difference between US and UK and because I am most experienced as a programmer in the company. But instead, I gave her my resignation and then explained why. She asked me what it would need to get me to stay and I told her I wanted a 10% raise and wanted to work 4 days/a 32-hour work week. I gave her 24 hours to respond, she spoke to higher-ups and finally came back the next day and agreed. And the next one is from r/MaliciousCompliance and is titled Karen Cannot Handle the Heat. So for some context, I used to work as a waiter in an Indian restaurant and every now and then we used to get a couple that would come in and always try to impress each other with how spicy they can handle their curry. Today the girlfriend Karen went for a Rogan Josh, not